Welcome back, everyone, to my YouTube channel. This is Frank DeMore, the author of the book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. And if you just happen to find my YouTube channel and you like to visit me or to write me or to email me, you'd be able to find my website right there. You'd be able to get in touch with me if you wanted to do by letter, by some people are doing. And if you wanted to email me, you'll see the email address right there. But today I'm going to be dealing with God's curse, and I'm going to show you why, and I think you're going to find this very interesting. But before we can connect the current events to the Lord's words, we need to know what the Lord has warned us for these last days. Now, God's curse, we see in Zechariah 12:3, and it says this, "And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." Now, also, we know God's curse. We see it in the book of Genesis. And Genesis tells us this, "And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed." And obviously, this is Genesis 12:3. And then we also see God's curse showing up in the book of Joel. And it says this, "I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted the land." So what we know for sure, you mess around with the Jews, you mess around with the nation of Israel, you mess around with God's holy city, Jerusalem, you're going to end up being cut into pieces. You're going to end up being placed under a curse, and you definitely don't want to be in a position against God. So what I've been doing is showing you every time a world leader goes to Israel and tries to divide up the land of Israel, there's a natural disaster that hits. Now, 2 weeks ago, I showed you what happened when Kerry left the United States to go over to Israel, and it was a massive snowstorm. One of the worst snowstorms America's ever seen. And then when he went over to Israel, when he landed in Israel, they got blasted with the worst snowstorm. It covered all of Israel, the worst storm in 100 years. And these things are no coincidence. Now, there's been a 2 weeks lapse, and 2 weeks ago I told you, let's watch what's going to happen, because Kerry is going to make another trip going over to Israel to try to jumpstart these failing peace talks. And so I told you, every single time that happens, watch the news and you'll see a natural disaster. Well, let's take a look. The article that just came up, and this is an article that came up January 2nd, yesterday. Analyst, Israel Palestinians face hard choices. Now, what I wanted to show you here, this is, as you can see, January the 2nd, 2014. It says, as the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry returns to the region Thursday, the American message to the Israeli and the Palestinian leaders is clear. It's time to start making hard decisions. Now, I did give you this information yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that I connected God's curse to this so you could see it firsthand. Now, moving on, it says, Kerry is bringing his own ideas from the outlines of a peace deal, and early indications are that the plan will include hard-to-swallow choices for both sides. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would likely have to recognize Israel's pre-1967 war frontier as the starting point for the border talks with the Palestinians, and that's all you need to know in this article. And what's so important about this is the pre-borders of the 1967, which they're talking about in this article, is that means the Palestinians would get back East Jerusalem. In other words, God's holy city that God said don't mess around with would go back to the Palestinians. And we know that the current Prime Minister of Israel has said over and over again he's never going to release that holy city. So you'll see again that the peace process will fall to the side. And we know that it's going to happen because in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, which I mentioned yesterday, talks about when they're calling for peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes. Now, John Kerry left to go back to Israel. And John Kerry left at the same time. I want to show you what happened. John Kerry leaves, and look what happens to America. So I moved over, I got the link to ABC News, and the headline, whiteout. Massive snowstorm hits 22 states with the coldest temperatures in 2 decades. Again, this has messed with almost 100 million Americans. It has messed with the roads. It has messed with, again, the air transportation. Watch the news.
The massive winter storm blanketing almost half of this country. In some places in the continental United States, they are colder than the North Pole. And in other parts of the country, it's whiteout. Drivers urged off the roads. 100 million Americans hunkering down tonight. And our extreme weather team is out in force and right there in the snowdrift. We begin with ABC's Gio Benitez in Chicago. It is piling up. Gio.
It sure is, Diane. Good evening to you from a snowy Chicagoland. It's just getting colder and colder. 12 degrees right here, right now. It feels like 2 below zero. And this stuff isn't just fluffy. It is downright relentless. From blaring sirens in Evanston, Illinois, alerting residents to a snow emergency, to a Chicago whiteout, up to 18 inches of fresh snow in places. The Midwest is a blowing, snowing deep freeze. Officials, too, sounding a warning.
We ask that residents check on the well-being of residents, friends, and neighbors.
The city's full fleet of 287 snowplows and salt spreaders dominate the streets. Snowplows in nearby Rosemont out in force too, looking like a choreographed ballet. Drivers operating on little sleep, a grueling job, as we found them.
Let's plow.
When it gets heavy, you just gotta keep going and going and going and going.
And that's what we do. You let it build up, we'll never move it.
Lyle Richmond knows that, clearing the snow from his house over and over again. 4 times within the past 24 hours?
Probably a little less than 24 hours, yes.
Wow.
4 times, yes.
The snowy mess also causing chaos in the air. More than 1,900 cancellations across the U.S. as holiday travelers try to get home. Plane de-icers working overtime. More than 500 accidents reported in Michigan. Icy roads all the way to Tennessee and even the mountains of North Carolina. This car flipped on its side on roads that look like glass. In International Falls, Minnesota, that haunting sign, 40 below zero. An opportunity to show the power of the cold temps. This egg went from cracked to frozen solid in a cast iron pan in just 5 minutes. And in a Wichita parking lot, perhaps America's most dedicated worker, gathering shopping carts in blustery sub-zero wind. And you know that chemical salt used to melt snow and ice? Well, it turns out that if the temperature is below 20 degrees, it's pretty useless. But one guy who may need it tonight is ABC's Ron Claiborne. He's live outside Boston tonight. Ron, good evening to you.
Hey, Gio, I'm in Cohasset, Massachusetts, south of... You know, it was where you are there in the Midwest. It could get even worse here as that storm system that you experienced joins with a system coming up from the south to form a very potent nor'easter here in the northeast.
So now I want you to understand what he's saying. There's this massive storm, and then there's another massive storm that's going to meet together. This is causing chaos around America in many places.
It started with a light powdering coating the northeast, and then it came roaring in. A powerful nor'easter that pounded the northeast, all the way up to Maine and far inland. In the Boston area, traffic ground almost to a halt on many major highways, and everywhere roads were littered with accidents and spinouts. A pickup truck flipped onto its side in Maine. A semi beached on a highway median, in this photo tweeted by the Massachusetts State Police, and a Massachusetts State Police car victim of a fender bender. In Boston, a snow emergency was in effect. Schools closed, street parking banned, government workers sent home early. In New York City, the heavy snow wasn't due to strike till much later.
Don't panic. Everything will be fine. You'll make it.
The storm was a kind of tale of 2 cities and 2 mayors. Boston's Tom Menino, 4 days from leaving office after 20 years.
I guess Mother Nature wanted to give me one more gift. A snowstorm.
And New York City's Bill de Blasio in office for just his second day.
It would have been nice to have a nice calm first day, but we have snow on our mind, and we are focused like a laser.
Also on the mind of New York officials, avoiding a repeat of last year's February blizzard, which saw motorists stranded on highways. Late today, New York's governor declaring a statewide emergency and banning all traffic on 3 major interstates near New York City, effective at midnight.
And this is really the epicenter of this nor'easter, this area from south of Boston, including all of Cape Cod. This area expects to get at least 15 inches of snow before this storm leaves sometimes Friday late morning. And that's just the first, Diane, of a 1-2 punch. That second punch is going to be temperatures plunging down, Diane, into the single minus digits. Very cold here in New England. Coming up.
We can tell how frigid it is. Thank you so much, Ron Cliff.
All right, so the 1-2 punch. This happened to the day when John Kerry landed in Israel. It happened to the United States when he landed in Israel, that we had this massive ice storm that was 2,000 miles long just 2 weeks ago. We had an interim of 2 weeks, and all of a sudden we get this massive storm with a 1-2 punch again. Do you think this is a coincidence? If you do, you need to go to my book. You need to read the chapter on God's curse. Now, when you go over to my site, right at the top, and you'll notice when you scroll down, you're going to click a link that will be my book. Now, this one right here says The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, December 18th. But I spent some time this weekend. I updated the book for you, and it is new as of January the 2nd, 2014. So you're going to see all of this news way back when I started to do the research about God's curse. On every date and every time that the America or any world leader went to Israel, or Israel went to the world leaders around the country to try to come up with a peace agreement, and in that process, these world leaders try to divide up the land of Israel, you'll see the natural disasters or the political disasters that happened to these leaders in the countries who tried to come against Israel and to divide their land. So take advantage of this free book. I've never charged anyone for anything I've ever done in this ministry, and God has blessed that work. And I'm praying that you'll take advantage of my labor so that you'll have it right today for free. God bless you all.